Welcome back to We Married the Family, the place for all your in-law issues, questions, and explorations as a daughter-in-law and as a couple. Today's episode is another confession episode, and with Ramadan coming up, it feels very timely to discuss this. For a daughter-in-law to say that she doesn't look forward to Ramadan is extremely sad. It's such a blessed month, one that we really want to increase in our spirituality and in our connection with God, where we want to purify ourselves. But for many daughter-in-laws, this month doesn't give them the feelings and experiences that they'd want. And instead it comes with more stress, more exhaustion, more anger, and more responsibilities. I'll be sharing some of the reasons that this happens and what you can do to help yourself and each other as a couple so you can have a better Ramadan this year. When you get married and move in with in-laws, you adapt and adjust to their way of doing things. So maybe the traditions and routines that your in-laws have are very different to what you had with your own family. Maybe you're missing your mother's Sehri specials and now you're the one that's making things for others. Maybe your family used to spend more time together whereas your in-laws sleep more. I do want to say that sometimes you might be exposed to ways of observing Ramadan that feel better for you at your in-laws than with your family growing up. So there is that side of it too. Maybe your mum always did things a bit extra, but your in-laws keep it simple, and that's a really welcome change for you. But this episode is for those who are maybe not experiencing it in this way. The change in Ramadan routines and traditions is one aspect that can be difficult for a daughter-in-law, but the main issue I hear about is the increased expectations of household chores, especially around meal times. You'd think that because there's one less meal in the day and because this month is about discipline and restraint that things might be easier. But some families put extra emphasis on having lavish spreads, which sort of defeats the purpose of some of the teachings of Ramadan. But anyway, that extra emphasis on meals brings with it extra pressure, extra expectations, and extra time towards preparation, cooking, and cleaning. Even outside of Ramadan, the bulk of household chores in some families falls on the daughter-in-law, even if she's newly married, even if she's younger than other people in the home, even if her parents-in-law are healthy and active. So this naturally carries on throughout Ramadan. You might be the daughter-in-law who is expected to wake up at Sehri time before the rest of the family and prepare suhoor. You might be the daughter-in-law who's expected to make at least 2 courses every day and then also left to clear up once iftar is over. You might be the daughter-in-law who feels embarrassed about being on her period and will carry on waking up in the early hours even though you're not fasting. If any of these are you, this is not fair or sustainable, and you will start to feel exhausted and resentful if things don't change. And as much as this might seem like an in-law issue, it's also saying something about you. You have to think about your actions and words that might be maintaining cycles like these. Even if you're feeling bitter and you're forcing yourself to live up to some spoken or unspoken standards, it is you who is making a choice in this situation. So is it possible for you to make a different choice? Sometimes a daughter-in-law won't ask for support even if it's available, or she'll say yes to things that are only suggestions, not obligations. If you were to choose something different, you might be feeling guilty or inadequate or fearful within yourself, and those feelings push you to override your own needs and choices. And this is where you might be blaming your in-laws for something that is actually going on within yourself. So think about where you might be making things more difficult for yourself and what your options actually are to do things differently. You can challenge yourself to make a different choice, to tap into your courage, your vulnerability, your bravery, your strength, and see where that takes you. And this might be part of your own growth during this month. You might be thinking, but they want me to do X, Y, Z, and they're always telling me what to do, and they want me to make fresh samosa, and they make a fuss when I wake up late. And that might be true, but just because someone wants something from you doesn't mean you have to give it. And just because someone feels a certain way about you doing or not doing something, it doesn't mean that you have to give in to their emotions. These are actually signs that you might be lacking self-esteem and personal resolve, or that you might be in an emotionally entangled relationship. It's when we keep repeating the same patterns that we start to feel stuck and powerless. You can do these things if you feel good about doing them, not if you feel forced to. And that itself is an internal shift that you can make. Ask yourself, what would I choose? Even though they want me to do X, Y, Z, what do I want? What is more aligned to who I am and how I feel? What would I be happy doing in this situation? When others want something of you, maybe you can do part of that thing, but not all of it. Or maybe you can do it once a week, but not every single day. Or maybe you would like to do it, but you'd also like to have more support in doing it. The inner transformation within this is also about living with more honesty and truth. If you're pretending to enjoy something but really feeling upset by it, or serving others but inside you're feeling angry, then there's a big misalignment here, and these are the areas that you want to bridge, either by changing your behavior or changing your internal state. So this is actually an opportunity to evolve as a person, in your emotional maturity and in your spirituality. Don't just stop at the pain that's on the surface. Go a little bit deeper and look at some of these struggles as opportunities to develop your character, to live in a way where your inner and outer state are more in sync. You're not going to feel peaceful if there's such a huge disparity between what you do, what you say, and how you really feel. If there are wrongdoings occurring, then it is the responsibility of each person to change those wrongdoings and injustices. There's a hadith in which the Prophet, peace be upon him, says, "Whoever sees an evil action, let him change it with his hands. If he can't, then with his tongue. And if he can't, then with his heart." But we are encouraged to approach it in an active way first. There's so much within Islam that is about positive reform, whether it's to do with our own selves or our society. And I know there's loads of unfairness towards daughter-in-laws. Even if we take the teachings of loving for others what you love for yourself, your in-laws might want a comfortable and peaceful Ramadan but not care about you having the same. And this is where culturally we need change to occur within each person. But I doubt your in-laws are listening to this podcast. So as always, you're the one that's here. You're the one that can make a change within yourself too. You need to be really honest with yourself and take accountability for your part in your experience. None of this is to say that it will be easy or that your situation will change because of it, but to share with you that you do have agency, you can make different choices, and you can find opportunity even amongst the obstacles. God has given Ramadan to you, even as a daughter-in-law, to reap its blessings. The last thing that you want is to leave Ramadan feeling bitter, angry, and regretful. So really take this as an opportunity to push yourself towards a positive change. What do you need to change to be able to enjoy Ramadan again? Could you make some of your obstacles work for you instead of against you? And it still might not be ideal, but you definitely will have room for movement. For example, if you're looking after the kids, could you take that as an opportunity to do more faith-based activities and reading together? Or just be with them in playfulness? If you want to increase your remembrance of God and increase your dhikr, could you do that whilst doing chores rather than waiting until you have a free window? If you're being in service to others, could you redo your intentions for that? If there's something that you want to do, like going to the masjid, attending circles, sending iftar boxes to the neighbours, things that will really bring enjoyment and fulfillment to you this month, how can you take the lead on making these things happen? Maybe you need to invite motivation and hope back into your life. Maybe you need practical support. Could you invite family members to be involved in these things with you? Could you step into a more active rather than a passive role? And is there space for you to delegate to others instead of taking everything on your own shoulders? There might be room to work together. And you can also think about whether you can reframe some of your usual thought patterns and see your in-laws as an opportunity rather than as obstacles. Your Ramadan could also be more enjoyable and uplifting if you make changes within your marriage. Does your husband expect the things from you that his family does, or does he not? And maybe you're assuming that he does without having spoken to him. You can have some really helpful conversations here about what you would like your Ramadan as a couple to look and feel like. Sometimes the husband stays in bed till 10 minutes before Fajr, and his wife has been downstairs with the family since an hour beforehand. I'm sure there's something that could change within that. Sometimes he might go out with friends after Tarawih whilst you're alone with his parents. Or maybe he's not going to Tarawih at all, but you would like to go together. This month can be really spiritually nourishing for you as a couple. It could look like him leading prayers at home, or sitting together whilst reading Quran. You can watch a lecture series together. I mean, most of us watch Umar Suleiman's series, so you could do that on a daily basis. You can also ask your partner what he would like to do this Ramadan. There might be things that he does want to change within himself, or that he does want to increase in this month. And you can both go on the journey together, supporting each other and encouraging each other as a couple and individually. Some of the change might look like having difficult conversations for the greater good, like your husband speaking to his siblings about splitting chores more evenly, or him working with you despite his mum saying that he doesn't need to, quote-unquote, do women's work. Some of these things can have a positive knock-on effect on your relationship, whether that's because you're now feeling a bit more lighter and in control, or because people, to your pleasant surprise, are actually cooperating with you and relationships feel more unified. Maybe some people do feel disappointed by your decisions, not because you're doing anything hurtful, but because you've taken your autonomy back. And those emotions that are coming up for them are not for you to worry about. Ramadan is about worship and becoming more conscious and closer to God. You can 100% do that through your relationships as well. It doesn't just have to be through reading the Quran cover to cover. And actually, you might have a bigger breakthrough by addressing some relationship issues than sitting and reading Quran as a way to get away from your in-laws. This is your Ramadan, and you don't have to give it away. And actually, if you do give it away, you will be losing more than your peace of mind. There's countless blessings within this month that you really want to harness. So don't let your stuckness, your hopelessness, or your negativity prevent you from doing that. Look for workarounds, negotiations, areas for movement, and these can be discussed as well, not just dictated. Otherwise, you risk being too rigid and creating even more issues. If you're too set on having something your way, and that you'll only be happy if it happens your way, that's not going to be helpful. You have to be realistic. Sometimes daughters-in-law fantasize about a very unrealistic idea because they feel so trapped. There's so many things that they've compromised on or sacrificed or are grieving, and that leads them to create these fantasies in their mind, but then that takes them away from their current reality and being able to mobilize into action in this reality. Sometimes daughters-in-law might fantasize about a very unrealistic idea because they feel so trapped. And if they didn't feel trapped, they wouldn't even entertain this idea in the first place. It's like you're trying to reach for something unattainable, and you've pinned your hopes onto this unattainable thing, but that's making you feel even more trapped and unhappy and angry. It's like you're stuck in the anger of not living this fantasy life that you've created from your struggle, rather than facing reality and coming up with creative solutions within your real life. For example, having limited time for worship might be grating on you and you wish you had that free time back. You wish you didn't have so much on your plate, and you start thinking that you'll only be able to engage in worship if you were living alone. But there definitely are other ways around this. A daughter-in-law who's often spent Ramadan deeply engaged with the Quran, for example, might find that now with more responsibilities, she's struggling to even get through half of it. Instead of continuing to fixate on the fantasy of living alone, you could broaden your vision and take a look at what other doorways to God you have around you. Is there something that you're resisting that could actually connect you to God in a stronger way? If you've always taken an hour or two in the day to sit in worship, but now the routine is different and you find yourself being busier or more tired, there could be things to change in your day, but you could also turn your attention to the last third of the night where God is closer and there are no interruptions. You might feel an even sweeter taste of faith doing this than if you were still trying to get those hours in the daytime. Also remember that there are so many more ways to gain benefit from this month. It's not just about praying, fasting, but about purifying your heart. So it's a great time to go inward and work through any of the darknesses, some of what we've talked about in today's episode, any negative thought patterns like rumination, any harmful habits like gossiping. Maybe there are grudges that you're holding on to. These are all things that you can work on that can give you a really great spiritual progression and help you to enjoy Ramadan. So I'll leave you with the reminder to take a look at yourself and what you can change within yourself, behaviourally, psychologically, and spiritually. I hope this Ramadan brings a relief for you, that it brings you closer to God in ways that you wouldn't have expected, and that instead of stopping and sitting at the doors that appear to be closed, you continue to search for and create openings. If you've been affected by anything discussed in today's episode and would like to work together, you can join my daughter-in-law's membership, or book in for one-to-one therapy or couples therapy with myself or another therapist.